recommend Meetup to a lot of my friends that are looking for different things. Wine tasting, movies, book club, meet a lot of new people, a lot of new friends, and it will make you more social. I do recommend Meetup to a lot of my friends that are looking for different things. Wine tasting, movies, book club, meet a lot of new people, a lot of new friends, and it will make you more social.
and welcome to the 7th game of HANS and NEPO match in Belgrade, Serbia. As we already see, we got Eleyah on the board. Good morning, guys. You're doing well. Sorry guys, I'm having some technical problems with adjusting the board here. But we can notice that both of them are still moving very quickly. Perfect. All right. Let's see what we have already on the board. So NEPO opened with Eleyah, like in the first game, but now Hans chooses a different variation. He didn't play Berlin. Bishop to e7, rook to 1, b5, bishop to b3, castles h3, bishop to b7, d3, d5. In a database, there is, of course, many games here. It's quite well-known position. Played in many top-level tournaments. We got this trade, and usually what is Black doing, he is sacrificing this pawn in the middle. It's called martial attack. And NEPO chooses to actually take on d4. Hans took back, but there was also an option to take here on e5 with rook, where Hans would take on b3. Then after something like knight takes b3, then Hans would go for c5, and he would try to compensate this pawn sacrifice for beautiful bishop pair that can definitely put some pressure on the king side and create some chances for him directly, which is good opening choice because this is the 7th game and the afternoon is the last game. The last game of this match. So Hans wants to put some pressure and create some chances directly from the opening. But NEPO chooses to take on d4, and after he takes d4, Hans' pawn structure is a little bit overexposed. but on the other side he got space, which is great. And he'll go c5. He'll most probably put this knight somewhere back so he can open up this bishop. On the other side, Nepo will try to play the move a4, let's say. He wants to open up this rook here, and he quickly needs to justify his pieces. Let's say knight on e4, and then bishop will come out at some point, but he's also struggling where to put his bishop because all these squares are covered by Hans pieces. This bishop is good. He's taking actions on this diagonal. And yeah, we're gonna have another exciting game most probably. Hopefully not a quick draw here. And Nepo spending some time now, because he also got an option to go queen to f3 here, which is not natural move at all, because you're stepping in the potential discoveries from this bishop, but since this bishop is not protected, Hans will most probably play something like rook to b8, also avoiding the pawns on the a line after the trade of pawns, and also protecting this guy here. So now the famous discovery attack exists here, and it will definitely put pressure here, or maybe some other square. But he has knight on e4. f5 here, some people would think is a good move, but unfortunately it's not, because you're opening up this diagonal for your bishop. And there is fantastic distraction decoy move, which is knight g5, sacrificing temporarily the piece, but on the other side queen is overloaded and cannot keep the track over the knight on d5 and at the same time take this guy on g5. So Nepo will just take, and we can simply see the ruined pawn structure, also collecting more pawns, and Nepo will be winning in this position. So that's why many people here could make mistakes and play this type of move, thinking that he cannot jump on knight g5, but actually Nepo can do that. Of course, f5 could be possible if, let's say, king is maybe on h8 and he has some time to do that, but in this particular case, Hans has to be conscious of how he extends his pawns already from the opening. Nepo is trying to refine his lines. I think we don't have clock, right? We don't have clocks here, so let's try to adjust that also. Clocks are frozen. Sorry about that. Yeah, no, it's better. How are you doing, guys, today? And Nepo played queen to f3 while Hans responded quickly with a move c5. Hans blundered. What is this guy? What? Wait, what? c5 is a blunder. Wait. Is this an... Wait, what? Hans... Rook e5. Is this on the board? Or I'm wrong? What is happening? Rook e5 wins the piece. Wait, is this bluff? What's happening, guys? Wait. Wait. Is this correct position on the board? Why Hans blitz out c5? No. This is not real. No way. How is this possible? What he's preparing on rooks, I don't understand. Queen c7, clearly we just take here. And if this, we just take here. What Nepo played? Oh, Nepo played a4. Oh my god. Nepo blunders back. Oh, what is happening, guys? Oh my god, I cannot believe. Nepo did not play rook e5. Why he didn't play rook e5? No way. No way. I don't believe that this is true. This is the morning game, guys. This is obviously tiredness from both sides. Clearly, I think Nepo at some point will realize that rook e5 was winning. But I don't know why did he miss something? Like, wait, let's rewind this. Rook e5. And now what could be possible move that will affect Nepo to not play this move in the game? I don't really understand now. Is this queen b8? But even rook takes d5 is possible. Did he think that there is some c4 move here? dc4? But I still don't understand. I still don't understand what just happened. Like, why it was not obvious to play the move rook e5? There is no discoveries. There is no any traps that could visually be annoyed by Nepo here. I just don't understand. Alright, guys. I'm still not believing that NEPO is not realizing that rook e5 was completely winning for him. I don't know what happened. I just don't know what happened. And I think Hans realized. And now he took on a5. But this is so impressive that Hans blitz out c5. Nepo missed. Played natural move a4 because he believed Hans. That's why you should never believe your opponent. That's why you should just never believe your opponent. And maybe actually Nepo realized also that he just missed the win. Yeah, I think now you look at the face of Nepo. Look at the face of Nepo. He just realized that he was completely winning. Nepo completely pissed off, I think. So Eleyah, the blunder was not transmission error? No. Look at the Nepo. Nepo is just... Look at the Nepo. Guys, Nepo realized. Nepo realized that rook e5 is finishing the game. This is the moment of the game that sometimes you cannot recover from, because this is huge moment and could affect the Nepo for the rest of the game, because he will consistently bring that thought to his mind that he was winning. Look at this. That, you know, this is now very psychologically bad for the Jan Nepomniachtchi. Of course, Hans is happy, but he is also not happy that this actually happened, that this very, like, let's say, 2000 level blunder happened in the game. This is very, very beginner blunder. And I'll go now in the playing hall and fix the exposure of the camera, because they're obviously very white. So I'll be here in 1 minute. Alright, guys. I hope you saw me then playing home. I'm back. And yeah, we got side info that NEPO was very mad. He went out and he immediately realized that he missed the chance. And he was very, very angry at himself. Out of the playing home once he went out. Still mad on himself. But okay. Did he break something? I don't know. But yeah, I could relate that. This is called impatient. This is called believing your opponent, not focusing in the game. Complete impatience. But I like how Hans is handling this situation. He's definitely focused. On the other side, he has this poker face. And he's not happy what happened, but he's happy that he survived. And he looks forward to fight back in this position. It's based leveled according to computer. We can now try to stabilize also in the chat because we were also shocked that this happened out of the opening, which is absolutely unbelievable for 2700 plus level. And okay, let's say here Hans can go for bishop c6, harass the bishop statement, the rook statement here. Rook will go all the way back, let's say, and then maybe Hans will go something like a5, a4, trying to bring this bishop to a2 so he can close the line for this rook. Let's say NEPO will go something like knight e4. Maybe Hans will try a4, bishop c4, and then something like knight to b6. But to be honest with you, this position is overall, in the long run, according to the pawn structure, good for NEPO if he can handle the c4 square. There is not this move, of course. Generally speaking, there is a lot of things still going on here. It's not simple position at all. But I want to say that Hans is still not happy about the structure that he has, but he's happy that he definitely survived this blunder. I don't know if it's possible, so we can like replay it and see this literally on our screens. I'll try to make it happen somehow, so we can see the replay of that moment. But this is unbelievable. Still shocked about what just happened. So on the live board we have exactly this, and also Hans played knight to b4. Yeah, let's go and replay what just happened. Yeah, exactly. So we got this standard Lopez line, bishop e7, rook to 1, b5, and then Hans went for the martial attack, d5, takes, knight takes d5, knight bd2, and after knight e4, Nepo had a choice of taking immediately with rook takes e5, but I believe this is quite well explored here, or maybe actually he was not a big fan of taking on e5, I don't know, but he was clearly avoiding that. He was capturing on d4, and then he plays the move queen to f3, where Hans literally in 1 minute autopilot the move c5, where after Nepo responded within 1 minute also the move a4. And that's actually where the drama start happening. Like in these structures, usually black is trying to give that pawn away on e5. In this case, he adjusted the structure and placed that pawn on d4. But black has to wisely push this c5 pawn, otherwise he might be in trouble, because we just saw that here rook to e5 is just completely winning. And I think not just there is on c5, there is even another rook takes e7. But maybe actually Nepo calculated rook takes e7, but he was not fan of after queen captures, bishop captures, queen e1, and if king h2, maybe he saw this and he didn't like it, but there is clearly not f1 here. And then after bishop takes, queen takes, rook f d8 or something, or rook from a to d8. On the other side, maybe Nepo didn't want to play this position, which is still completely winning for Nepo, but maybe he wrongly evaluated this. I don't know. Or he, like, I cannot understand, did he actually see anything, like, of this? Or he just believed Hans and played the move very quickly a4? Did he actually even calculate? Because this is very unreal that on c5, he did not calculate rook takes and he did not calculate rook e5. I could just not believe that he just completely missed 2 whole moves, which is incredible. So okay, now after a4, bishop takes pawn takes a4. He realized bishop c6 happened, rook to a1, and knight to b4. So Hans is definitely taking some action, putting the pressure on c2, ready to expand this pawn all the way to a4 because he wants to put some pressure on this guy. So now after queen e2, let's say there is rook to e8. And I believe that like Hans is putting some pressure now. So Hans fans are enjoying this game now. But on the other side, Nepo fans are very sad. Oops. Where is the camera? Why we are not seeing them? Why we are not seeing them? Oh God. I have to check again what happened with because it's not reconnecting, I would say. Okay, let me see. Yeah, guys, my mistake. My laptop was on charge, but it was not completely, when you're putting the laptop in charge, it was not completely in charge. My bad, guys. Hope you don't blame me for this. Okay, so camera is back. And we got slight advantage for NEPO. Firstly, no, I mentioned that, am I muted? No, I'm not. I mentioned that my laptop was transmitting the camera and laptop went out of battery, ran out of battery, because it was not fully connected with the charger by accident. So that's why. Yeah. Unfortunately. But now we are here. So, okay. Bishop c6, rook to a1, knight to b4, queen to e2, rook to a7, and knight to c4. So, Hans allowed Jan to consolidate with his sequence. He should start directly maybe with a5, a4, which definitely put a pressure on this bishop, because now the problem is, if let's say NEPO goes for this, Hans would like to trade and now play knight to b4, and there is no clear defender for this pawn here, which makes possibility for Jan to go queen d1 in passivity or to go knight to c4 for the activity. And if let's say knight takes c2, to be just activate rook e5. But technically, Jan will remember this rook e5 move very, very well. And we can notice that after this, he's definitely not happy. But on the other side, he got quite pleasant position with his sequence. So knight to c4, bishop d2, bishop f4 will come very soon. It's hard for Hans to play now this move because we're gonna clearly see at least this sacrifice from NEPO. Now it's totally different because after queen takes, there is the bishop hanging on e7, and definitely white is much better here. So on the other side, after consolidating where one like this, what is the question for Hans? How to improve his position? Dude, it was plugged in, it was chess mafia sabotage. Maybe. But technically, I just didn't plug it fully. My bad. So yeah, a lot of things happen. Firstly, Hans blundered, then NEPO blundered, then our laptop died in the playing hall, now it's back. What's the next going wrong here? What's the next thing going on here? It's a good question. At least now they don't look like they're radioactive. Yeah. I like how glitched out this event is. Guys, I have one honest question. Because now everything is normal. But there is one problem, as you notice. Camera is... This is like the cable thing, I think. It's not enough long. So somewhere maybe cable was pressed by some little thing. Is this annoying you really? Like the time to time you can see that camera becomes purple. Like this. Is this really annoying? Currently now I think it's rainy. Okay, so time to time they are getting purple sea beyond them. Okay, so after bishop d5, let's discuss now what happens further, because NEPO managed to consolidate the position, didn't allow Hans to push a5 and a4 in the future. So now bishop to f4 is quite a natural move that could happen. And I believe that the next move could be queen to g4, which will make some press on g7 in the future with something like bishop e5 and trying to provoke some weaknesses, or just generally activating the queen on a better square. On the other side, Hans' idea is definitely if he can manage to push this move a5, so he can put the rook on a6 and then to shift the rook on the other side. So Niemann wants a5 as soon as possible, followed by rook a6 and rook g6. That's actually the moment where he is going to put some pressure on g2. Eleyah, what happens if match finishes drawn? Hans wins one game, other game is draw. Let's say if this game Hans survives because he clearly doesn't have good position now because of the pawn structure. Let's say if Hans survived this position and on the other side he wins next game, then match is tied and there is no tie breaks, unfortunately. I asked the arbiter yesterday, but it would be good if we could have the tie breaks. It's pretty much just the match of 8 classical games. Who wins shows better form at the moment. And yeah, entertainment for audience, viewership, and that's it. Why is there this conspiracy that the person interviewing him in his videos is Carissa Yip? I don't think so. Carissa is professional player. Why she would go with Hans Niemann and making little interviews? So bishop e6 happened. Bishop e4, bishop e6. And knight f5. Okay. Offering the trade. So more NEPO simplifies, especially the light square bishop, then these squares becomes more soft. So now, of course, bishop takes b3 will come. Knight takes b3. Maybe c takes b3 is also possible because it opens the line, but of course knight takes will happen. And now it depends here how Hans wants to counterplay. Is there any c4 here sacrifice? And after d takes to go with d3. c4 takes d3. Takes, knight takes. And yeah, this is definitely maybe what Hans wants. He wants to just clear this middle structure despite sacrificing the pawn. He would like to maybe later put a rook here so he can attack the knight, the b2 pawn at the same time. Bishop on f6, for sure, to get some press on b2 pawn. We got this trade, and now c4 is candidate move. Bishop d6 is another one, I would say. So generally speaking, black can get some counterplay now, especially with c4. No, live board is here. We are just, I'm also reading chat, trying to update, trying to fix the problems in the playing hall, so doing everything here. Don't mind me. It's live, so when they make the move, it will show up, don't worry. I just analyze, and when I analyze, it forgets to bring to the live board, and that's why. So, okay, yeah. This is something what could Hans try now. Let's say bishop d6. Is this simplification good? Potentially, but I like more this move c4. This clearly goes in direction of clearing everything in the center and giving some chances to like compensate this pawn for something. But I think on c4, Nepo can play knight f5 back. And now the difference here, the knight will get the c4 square back. In the previous scenario, if c4 and let's say d takes c4, d3 takes happens, then in this case, knight doesn't have good outpost. So he's pawn up, Nepo is pawn up, but Hans has beautiful compensation for that pawn. And he'll put a bishop on f6. He'll put rook to b7 or queen to b6 in the future. Depends also. Now Nepo is clearly having this bishop hanging here, so he needs to play something like bishop to e3. Okay, what we have on the board? c4. Very good, Hans. I like this move. Hans played c4. Can you show evil bar on the live board? I can. Okay, then you have c4 clearly opening up, and now Nepo, if he wants to keep this little advantage as he had until now, 0.4, he has to find this move knight to a5, because in the future this brings him this beautiful square on c4, which we can adapt his knight, adapt his pieces. That's what he wants. Yeah, definitely cable problems. Would Nepo agree to tiebreak if the match is draw? Maybe. I don't know. I think personally that this is only for classical, but maybe they're gonna make tiebreaks also. I'm not sure, but from what I heard from the arbiter, there is nothing scheduled about tiebreaks, so it's just 8 classical games and that's it. The score, again, question about the score. 3.5 for Jan, 2.5 for Hans. I like the contrast in outfits. Yeah, HANS. Quite professional. Suit, shirt, hairline. NEPO on the other side, hoodie. Trousers. NEPO was always a fan of casual dressing, while on the other side, HANS likes this professional style, as I saw from other tournaments. NEPO even got a couple of times, I think, attention from the arbiter that he needs to change his dressing, because sometimes he was wearing basic shirts or hoodies, and that was not allowed in that prestige tournament. So yeah, this is the only one move to keep the game pleasant for NEPO. On the other side, this pawn sacrifice is legitimate. So after take in this position, let's say bishop e3, maybe actually this and now this. Forcing moves, knight takes g2, taking the pawn back, and if king takes, queen a8, very nice tactic. Okay, this is a little bit tricky, because everything is literally forced. So knight will get out because of queen a8 tactic. Otherwise, in this situation, if you play with the rook, you lose your bishop. If you play with the queen to e3, let's say, then taking here, I think it's not possible, because now it's not the same. Like knight takes g2 doesn't work because this tactic doesn't work with a queen. And if black tries something like knight to c2, okay, rook to c1, and this pawn is falling on a6, NEPO will get one more pawn in the game. Let's say knight b4 here, defending that pawn. It's currently better to have the queen on a7 than the bishop on a7. That was always better. So I believe that after c4, NEPO will find the move knight f5. I think so. Hello chat. Welcome to stream. What game is this? This is the 7th round. Hi all, I just joined. Did HANS actually play 13 move c5 and NEPO respond with a4, or is it a transmission error? No, it clearly happened. It clearly happened. No one believed that this happened on the board. Technically, I thought firstly it was a transmission error, but then from their reaction and also from inside information that NEPO was really mad walking outside playing home, that he missed that. It's clearly happened. Is this chess or checkers? Of course, checkers. If NEPO wins this, they're not gonna play the 8 game. No, they're gonna still play the 8 game. In the past, there was the rule that once the match is decided, match is stopping. It means if NEPO wins this game, then match will stop. But they changed the rule, and now organizer decides how the match will go. So they're playing until the end. Because this match doesn't decide anything, like nobody will be world champion after this, or any other title. It's just exhibition match that contains 8 rounds, and who has more points out of that, that one is a winner. Nobody thinks that it's good to put knight on a5, but of course you're not gonna keep your knight there. You're not gonna restrict your rook from taking the pressure over the a6 pawn, but this move actually stops black itself to play the move a5, and on the other side it's planning to reroute on c4. So I believe Nepo is calculating now, because maybe he missed this move, or he might seeing from a distance. Maybe he doesn't like something like c3, but clearly here I believe that this pawn is a weakness, not really an advantage for Hans. Bishop to e5, let's say, bishop to f6, and just trading more pieces will possibly result in more comfortable position. But this still is not clear, like this position is not still decided, but if Nepo managed to undermine this pawn here, then this is much better position for white. Hans hasn't had many chances this match. He has some chances, maybe in the last round, according to machines. But we analyzed the game with Jan afterwards, and he mentioned that even with this 0.7 for Hans, position is super close and not clear what's going on. Even though later Nepo was the one that was pressing a little bit. What happening if tied after 8 games? I believe nothing. Nepo is a King's Gambit expert, correct. Is this the last game? No, there is the afternoon game. Afternoon game in 3 hours from now. Why not take the black pawn? Makes sense, but that's actually the point why Hans sacrificed that pawn. Because he wants to push the move d3. And then after c takes e3, he wants knight takes e3. In this scenario, he is making the fork on bishop and rook, where Nepo obviously has to sacrifice, let's say queen to e3. And now, if they take here, we take here, and in the future the knight is hanging. So that's why maybe Hans has to play something like rook to d7. And then Nepo needs to get out of the way with this problem, so rook from e to d1. And now still, like, just exchanging the pieces, like knight takes f4 or something, they'll result in more comfortable position for Nepo. So that's why he wants to keep the tension. He wants to keep the fire on the board. This time control is better than 2 hours low increment. I like it so far. I don't know what you think about this new time control that they are testing in this exhibition match, but I like it so far myself. When that Hans will go for candidate tournament to beat world champion? He needs to qualify firstly for the candidates, and then he needs to win the candidates, and after winning the candidates, he needs to win the world championship match. So the road and the path is hard, but it's not unachievable. Like Nepo was 2 times in world championship match. Once against Magnus Carlsen, the other time against Dinkleren. Have you played them both? What were your results? I think I played once Nepomniachtchi in the Title Tuesday. Yeah, I played him once in Title Tuesday. He won. Against Hans, I never played. Personally, I think 60 plus 30 is too short, too little time to think. But that's the point. That's actually the point. Like, If you have all time on this word, you're gonna eventually figure out the solution on the board, and the game will be very boring, right? If you want to play perfect chess, you have to practice, not to rely that you have 2 hours for thinking. I mean, yeah, chess is the game of silence, of spending time. But obviously, let's say you are grandmaster, and then there is 2200 guy, and you gave him 3 hours to think. He'll think and he'll find the best moves all the time. Most probably, the position is not complicated. And when you have time, it's just bringing more excitement. That's what I think. I think that so the question is, why play classical time controls then? Think the FIDE idea of bringing these time controls down is not the right move. I think there is one side, there is 50% of people that agree on that, and 50% people, they don't agree. I think that this will never become like the official time control in the World Championship matches or candidates or something. That's for sure. But it will be part of something, like, for example, this new format, Total World Chess Championship. Chess was fun when there were no engines. I agree, but less popularity many years ago. There was big blunder already in this game. Yeah, there was many blunders actually. Not just one, there was two, because Hans blundered once and then NEPO blundered back. And now NEPO spending a lot of time. We can first time see in this match that Hans has more than 10 minutes than NEPO. Almost more than 10 minutes. NEPO clearly not satisfied with what happened with the first part of the game, because he had clear win. He was clearly angry in himself. On the other side, Hans fighting back in this match. Quite calmly, confidently, without any doubts. That's not really true. Like in candidates, Hikaru thought for an hour for one move and still blundered. Super GM still losing classical. Yeah, that's actually the point. You don't really need that amount of time to think and find the correct move to play better. Because there is a rule, like some technical rule, that every good player is recommending: do not spend more than 15 minutes, 15-20 minutes for one move. Because technically everything after will just make more doubts and more panic to you. Like in general scenario, like in 90% of cases, you spend a lot of time and you just blunder that move that you think a lot, because you're doubting many options. And at some point you don't even calculate what's happening, you're just relying on intuition. So Hikaru was trying to recall, then he was trying to think what's happening, he couldn't find, but I assume that he would find, if he would be at that position that he blundered after thinking of 67 minutes against Sindarov. 67 minutes, yeah. When he was thinking against Sindarov, he generally got... your opponent is also getting confidence, and you are getting out of comfort zone after that, because clearly he's surprising in the opening. Okay, on that level, on candidates level, it's more than a panic, so... Yeah, one GM said that if you can't find solve of a problem so long, you can't find it even if you think for 2 hours. That's correct. I believe that's very correct. And NEPO spends a lot of time, and you can clearly see on his face, not this face, but hopefully the rainbow will move. NEPO not satisfied with what's happening on the board. But okay, it is what it is. It's already behind. That's actually the main problem for chess players, that you have to forget something, some chance that happened that could decide the game on the spot, and now you're playing with this the whole game. You have to handle that during the game. Psychologically, it's very hard. Just psychologically, it's very hard. Because when you blunder something, or if you allow your opponent any sort of advantage, then this could be a very big problem. And the NEPO took the pawn on c4. Finally, after 15 minutes of thinking, which is huge for this time control, he finally took that pawn. And now Hans obviously has to play the only move d3. This is the only move in the position. I believe that he has to respond quite quickly. There is no need to think. Yeah, of course. Yeah, very good from Hans. No need to think. Let the time burn on Nepo's side. Maybe Nepo went out to get relaxed a little bit, because it's clearly not his game. Hans confidently responding there. Look at his face. Full mode lock-in. How many moves ahead of each possible move you have to calculate if you are FIDE master and if you're grandmaster? Okay, technically, I believe that all of them could have the same vision, like that they can go deep and decide the line. For example, like we see here. For example, I'll show you the difference. Let's say we calculate c takes, knight takes. Then I showed you bishop e3, knight takes e1, bishop takes e7, knight takes g2, and let's say in this position, average, let's say FIDE master could stop thinking. But grandmaster, good grandmaster, would think even more, because king takes g2, queen to a8, he would think what to do in that position. Let's say queen a8, queen to f3, queen takes a7, and he will spend some time more here. Queen takes a7, and he would even think more, and he will, let's say, decide to go queen c6 in his visualization. But you cannot really decide. Sometimes grandmasters don't have good calculation. Maybe some grandmasters are very good in endgames. Like he has strength of 2800 in endgames, but his calculation is 2400. His opening knowledge is 2300. So it's very personal. So we have knight takes, bishop e3, and Hans decided to go rook to b7. So we actually got something similar on the board. And they're blitzing out the moves. They're playing very fast. So there was sacrifice on the board, but now clearly queen c2 is... It looks like, oh, we are losing the piece, but queen c2 is giving the piece back. Because clearly the rook has to move. Otherwise, if the queen protects the rook, then there is rook takes d3. And if rook takes b2, there is queen takes d3. So Hans fans don't get too much excited. This is not free piece. It's just temporary. And maybe they're simplifying toward a draw. Maybe that's actually the best reaction, let's say, for Nepo. Because if Nepo went for another risk here, and trying to get it, to get another chance here, then you maybe not gonna get the chance. Maybe you're gonna just make your position even worse. Are they having fun? I don't think so that Jan has having fun here, but Hans having fun escaping, of course. But I think both of them are really, really tired because this is the 4th day in a row that they're playing 4 morning games plus the other 1 afternoon. So they clearly need some rest. So today's final game afternoon will decide the winner of this match. Rook takes b2 well might happen here. This is like clearly the only option that looks attractive. Maybe there is other, but I think this is something what Hans will go for. If Nepo takes the pawn and Hans takes it, this is just a draw, and I believe that they will make the handshake here, and that's it. Hans will put the bishop on f6, he'll bring the rooks there, and that's it. So we might see very, very soon the handshake here, guys, if this happens on the board, if we have more simplification. But of course, Hans is trying to, after queen to c2, to think about some complications, because there's an option to play queen to b8 after rook takes d3, rook takes b2. But this is actually what Nepo could consider the chance, because with the queens on the board, and with this better development, because obviously one rook is on the d line, the other is on the a line, bishop is here, and if you take the look in the Hans position, this rook will come on c8, but he's still not developed. And there is already press on a6 that Hans needs to care about. So that's why now Hans is spending some time trying to see, is there anything better after queen to c2? Is there anything better than rook takes b2? Or what happens after rook takes b2, queen takes d3, and this trade that we just see, takes, and rook c2 here. But this will be just quick draw. We can clearly see that Nepo not satisfied, but that's it. It's already behind. Take the lesson, guys, both of them. Isn't today the last day? Today is the last day, but we still have one more round, which is afternoon. I think that even like someone in the chat mentioned that can Engine wins this position with white against human with black. I think if human sees this option of taking this pawn, there is no single trick that Stockfish can apply here. So practically speaking, after take, if human just hangs around with the rooks on the 8th rank and put a bishop on f6 and put the pawns on g6 and h5, there is no clear thing how Engine can win. Because engines are good in concrete action. They are not good in waiting. Okay, some engines are good in waiting. But when we, like last day, if you remember, in that close position, Engine couldn't fund any idea. So he was just burning the move around, but still showing the advantage for some side. So humans can see far distance when it comes to strategy and long-term patterns. But Engine is much better in the concrete calculation. What age did you start playing chess, Eleyah? I started with 5-6 years, I think. Maybe 6-7, I'm not sure. But generally when I get more professional, let's say on professional tournaments, I would say 11, 12. I started playing some youth tournaments, some rated tournaments, and so on. Nobody wins the game. This is clearly very stable position now. Nepo doesn't want to risk. On the other side, Hans is very happy that he got a chance to get out, and that's it, guys. We might see another draw in a row without big risks for for NEPO. Do you think NEPO is going for a draws to conserve the lead and close out the match? I don't think that NEPO wants. He wants to win the game, obviously, like HANS wants to win. As we can notice that he missed simple blunder that happened and played fast. So this shows, guys, that even in a high level, mistakes could happen. So don't be too much harsh on yourself. Don't think that you should see something. It was so easy. When you see this kind of situation, when you see that Magnus even blunders, that these guys are blundering, don't be harsh on yourself. Because psychologically, you are going to make the situation worse in your tournament. So you have to have clear mind. Why is NEPO reacting so much? Because he had a very easy chance to win the game in earlier stage. I thought HANS pieces is more active than NEPO. Currently, HANS is pawn down, he has piece up, but in the next moves, NEPO will bring that piece. On the other side, HANS will get a pawn for himself. Because now rook takes b2 and this endgame is complete draw. Like takes, 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 and rook c2 is not this move, of course. Rook c2, this is clear draw. We could see easy handshake after this. Even though they protect the pawn, rook c8 will appear, and there is no other protection segment that can be included. Maybe rook d7. Bishop f6 is apparently not good because there is c5, so that's why bishop f8. And maybe now rook takes a6, rook from 2 takes c4, rook to a7, and now just f6 to save the pawn, and that's it. Like, very safe position. HANS will be easily defending this. You're a very polite person, Eleyah, and your level commentary is excellent. Thank you very much. Do you have to trade queens, or you could keep the queens on the board? Okay, trading the queens here is of course in favor of HANS because this pawn is obviously falling down, so when you trade the queens, then it will be much easier, and HANS 2 can be 2. It will be much easier to make the game drawn, because this queen can easily support this pawn, while on the other side queen is hardly supporting this guy. And it's also hanging, so that's why HANS wants to simplify, and I believe that this game will end up in a draw in a few minutes, guys. HANS will exchange the queens, of course. NEPO is exchanging back, and HANS might play now the move rook to c2, as we mentioned earlier, just to stand behind the pawn. This is always the best strategy. Be behind the pawn and get everything under control. Rook to c2 on the board. NEPO is not happy with this move. This is always the best. If you want to control your opponent's pawns, the best way is to stay behind. Because on one side you are controlling the second rank, you are restricting the pieces. On the other side, you are controlling that pawn. If you would have your pawn also this side, let's say rook c8, and you don't have this rook on c2, you have your rook somewhere also back, let's say on a8, then in this case, NEPO will clearly stay behind the pawn with his rooks and start pushing these pawns. So that's the reason why this rook c2 move is so crucial for Niemann to completely neutralize counterplay from NEPO. And NEPO played rook to d7, putting the pressure on the bishop on e7. This is technically tricky move because he wants rook to c7 to stay behind and protect that pawn. So if something like bishop f6, rook takes a6 will lead into the same story, but rook a4 will defend the pawn. But now what's the problem is after rook to c8 we have this move c5. So this is still not so easy because Hans has to play on the better diagonal. Instead of bishop f6 he needs to put after rook d7 he needs to put a bishop on b4. That's much better option. While then they will play rook c7, but in this case Hans can just play something like a5. Bishop b6 technically is possible, but after rook a8 maybe Hans will be in a focusing mode here and trying to press on the queen side. So after a5, I don't know, position is very leveled. No threats like c5 here possible, but I believe that let's do some prophylaxis with h6. If c6, then something like rook d8, and the threat will be rook to d6, trying to win the pawn in the future. There is also this move rook to c1, and that could be annoying because it will offer the rook trade. So yeah, this game's still going on. I don't think that NEPO will press in this position, but he'll try for sure. This is going to be a long game. I don't believe so that this will be a long game. How to go from 1700 to 2000? I've just seen on FIDE that you got your title 2 years ago, so you probably had to do some improving as an adult. Yeah, I got a title 2 years ago. It means I crossed the margin, but I believe that I had, let's say, that possibility even in the past because I had a rating. At some point, I had a rating more in, let's say, 2019 than in 22, 24, let's say, at some point. So technically, I felt that I had that strength in the past, but the problem was consistency and discipline. I remember that I put in work like for half a year. I played some tournaments. I did some correct training, and of course confidence is really important, and there was a title. After that I dropped a bit because I was not thinking about a game. I was thinking about let's push it towards 2400, and every time I lose the game and I drop the rating I was getting frustrated. I was not that guy that liked to lose. What rating you need for FIDE Master? 2300 FIDE. Are you surprised about this current score, or it was expected? I believe it was expected that NEPO will have a little bit lead in the match as more experience, but on the other side, I would not be surprised that Hans did the same. Because clearly in the past months, past year, Hans is showing very good chess.
and always good in these 1-versus-1 matches. So Hans is definitely doing great, but maybe this is just not his match. Also, NEPO is a very strong player. Who is Elos? It's funny how chess audience gets obsessed with commentators. Elos. Who is Elos? I don't know who is that guy. Oh, Elos. You mean Elos. Okay. And let's put the scoreboard here. We can see 5 draws in a row, but these draws were not clear draws. In all these games, we were having some dynamics, very interesting moments, and technically Hans got some chances, NEPO got more chances. He scored that first important win in the first game, getting in lead and keeping that lead until the 7th game. And what happens if 4-4 will be the Armageddon? No, I think the tie breaks doesn't exist here. What is funny about this game that after this blunder, everything suddenly became super dry. They just started exchanging pieces. They started their energy dropped, like their confidence dropped. I think NEPO's confidence just dropped, like from this to this, because NEPO is not trying hard in this position, and he cannot try. I think so. Rook takes a6, and guys, we might see the draw offer sooner or later. He pins the bishop. This is still not easy until he unpins himself. Rook from f to c8 is the practically one move. Rook to b8 is another one, but rook f c8 is the easiest. It just defends the rook, as he did. He will bring the bishop backwards, and we might see the repetition, because now the only way to defend this is rook to f8. That's what he's doing, and NEPO is seeing that he can go backwards, pin it. Hans knows, stand up from the chair, decides to take a walk, get a little bit of refreshment. NEPO clearly not happy what just happened in this game. And will this affect the next game for NEPO, where Hans holds the white pieces? That's going to be really questionable. And NEPO goes for g4. So he wants to press a little bit. He has a chance. He knows this is 0-0 position, and both of them are now leaving. Interesting. There is nobody on the board. Clearly, would be funny if I leave now also together with them, and we have empty studio, empty playing hall. I thought that they will agree on the draw now, but NEPO wants to try something maybe. It's not a big deal, but I think Hans will hold this easily. Is this live? It was from the past. Hans came back. no dress code for this tournament. I believe so. How to use Endgame AI. Go on their website, you have the link in the description. Sign up, make an account, and immediately start using their features. You can play the game, you can do the puzzles, you can analyze, you can visit community tab. You can also watch this match on Endgame AI. Interact with the people in chat there the same way as here on our channels. And try their experience. You will not regret it. When you leave the table, is there a chance that the player might talk with someone and get help? Sorry, I'm new. No worries, we're gonna explain for you. So on this event, since there is supervisors and many arbiters, couple of fair play arbiters and the main arbiter that you can see on the right side behind the NEPO's chair, everybody that goes out from them, it's escorted by will be escorted by one of the arbiters. You can notice that one arbiter is currently standing behind Hans' head. This is the one arbiter that always walks out with them. There is another one which is standing outside. So nobody can talk. Nobody can use the electronic devices. And everything is clear. They have to go with them to the toilet, correct. Not directly to the toilet, but they're waiting for them outside. Rook to e4 played. I think Hans with his posture is waiting for draw offer from NEPO, because NEPO is the one that's deciding here. Because his rooks are more active, his rooks are staying on the 7th rank. Hans makes the improvement prophylaxis for the king. Did you watch Norway chess? Do you think Magnus is a little bit out of form? I think he is not out of form. I think he's just too relaxed, let's say like that. He might be too relaxed in some critical moments, like these guys were at that 13th move of the game. Magnus could beat any grandmaster in the world right now. I mean, he did, and he could, and he's doing also very well now, I believe so. But he's clearly not having so much fun at Norway chess. He won the last game against Fioruccia, so he got revenge. But that doesn't mean that he will perform well in the next game. But many people feel that Magnus will still win the event. Eleyah, who is the best in the world right now in every time control? Okay, Magnus won Blitz and Rapid, clearly showing the best and clearly winning the Speed Chess Championship, so I believe he's the one for sure. In Classical, I don't know. We see many good players. And they made a draw, guys. Let's go full screen. They made a draw. NEPO not happy at all. They are laughing. Nepo is laughing. They don't even want to comment this, what just happened in this game. You can see that he just commented something a little not expecting, yeah, and they both just agree that this game is hilarious, and both of them are leaving. I don't believe that they want to join the studio. They are so unhappy and they wanna settle down before the next game that starts in 2 hours and 40 minutes, guys. So we can take a look together without them, because we need to see what actually happened in this game. Let's take a look quickly. So Nepo opened with a first move e4, and Hans responded with e5. We got this real Lopez variation. In the first game, Hans played Berlin. Now he chooses to go with the main line of Marshall, and then after h3, Nepo went out of the sideline here, because the main move is c3 and a4. He went for this little sideline, which is h3. Bishop to b7, d3, and now Hans strikes with d5. E takes d5, knight takes d5, knight from b to d2, and knight to d4 by Niemann. So he's offering this free pawn on e5, but in return, he wants to get some compensation for that pawn and play now c5. In this case, c5 works, not like in their game, where technically black has a bishop pair and already very good development, so he can start pressing on the king side. Legitimate sacrifice. On the other side, he played knight e4, and Nepo didn't want to take on e5. He take on d4, and after e takes d4, he played queen to f3, where actually the things and madness starts. So in this moment, after queen to f3, we discussed some stuff with rook to b8, just defending the bishop, and then looking for some certain discoveries, then maybe pushing c5 later, and so on. But the problem in this position is that Hans, with spending 1 minute on clock, played the move c5. And at that time, I remember that I was adjusting something on my stream, and I just saw the evil bar went crazy. And I was like, wait, is this the transmission error or whatsoever? But it was actually on the board, where there is 2 winning moves. There is rook takes e7, and there is rook to e5. At this position, Nepo didn't see any of them. Or maybe he just was looking for rook takes e7, but he was not a fan of the position that could arise after queen takes, bishop takes, queen e1 check, knight to f1, exchanging on d5, and then playing out this position. But this is clearly winning also. White is much just better. He just need to get out of these x-rays and pins, and he'll be fine. And these 2 minor pieces are definitely better than 1 rook. And Nepo quickly responds with a move a4 and shows clearly on his face and his expression that he's not a fan of what just happened in the game. After that, we got side information from some arbiters that Nepo was very mad when he was walking towards the restroom, that he's not satisfied with what he just missed. And on the other side, we saw on the board that both of them were not happy, and the rest of the game went pretty calm, where Hans took on a4, and after rook takes a4, this is principle. A4 move is principle, but you have to pause. You have to take a deep breath and not rush for anything here, and see, okay, you have many captures. Like when it comes to many captures, you have to see this, you have to see this, you have to look for this. Even this type of stuff has to cross your mind, because in calculation, what is really important is, what if I even just play this move? I see clearly that this queen sacrifice is bad, but you just ask yourself, okay, what even if that happens? That's very important for calculation. So rook sac, what even if I sacrifice the rook? What even if that happened? What is the follow-up? You need to extend your calculation after. So at this point, after the move a4, b takes a4, rook takes a4, bishop c6. So Hans got some stability after justifying with his minor pieces and answering of opening up this diagonal. Queen to e2 by Nepo, rook to a7, defending that bishop. Rook to e8 was better because this rook was protected by bishop and he would be ready for some discoveries in the future. But he chooses rook to a7. I would pick rook to e8 here. The reason why, there was very nice idea of playing a5, rook a6, and rook to g6 in the future, which is not easy to see. Because at some point black has to play this move if you want to get some counterplay on the queen side. So after the move rook a7, Nepo played knight to c4, where Hans responded with bishop to d5. Nepo plays the move bishop to f4 and bishop to e6. So Hans stabilized with his bishops on the e line, trying to shut down the interaction with these two major pieces. Knight to a5, very nice move by Nepo, trying to exchange this light square bishop. That's the only piece that controls this light square here. But after this trade, Hans played this very beautiful move c4, which definitely clears the angle, clears the game, and opens up everything. At this point, there's two options now for Nepo. One is to take, which happened in the game, and the other one is to wait and play the move knight f5. So keeping this pawn, not accepting the pawn sacrifice, but in return, he would get strategically better position on the queen side because knight will get his square back. He will get this outpost. Instead, Nepo, already reflecting what happened in the game, not happy psychologically, he doesn't want to rush for anything in this game. He sees clearly that he misses simple tactics, and what happens if the same thing repeats in the rest of the game. So he's maybe fine with drawing up this on the board, so he decides to take. Then Hans plays the move d3. We see clearly trading here. They were playing very fast at this moment. Rook to b7 played, putting the pressure on this knight, responding with counterplaying on the other knight. And after taking this knight, Hans is piece up, but it's not enough to win the game because there is the move queen c2, which counter strikes the rook and still keeps the pressure on this knight on d3. So after rook to b2, which is the only square for the rook to get out. Otherwise, if queen to b8, then the knight is losing the defender of the queen on d8. So that's why rook takes b2. Queen trade is unavoidable here. Rook takes, and amazing move, rook to c2, puts the pressure on the pawn on the c line, stopping for further expansion and also controlling the second rank, which is quite important for the endgames. Nepo tried something with rook to d7, but Hans played the move bishop to b4. Important to keep this bishop on this diagonal, because if you put a bishop on f6, then in the future c5 will defend it, and Nepo might get some chances here. So that's why Hans played the move bishop to b4. Rook takes a6, rook takes c4, and pretty much at this point the game was already over, because it's just a matter of time when the handshake will happen. And after a few moves, Nepo offered a draw and Hans accepted. What a exciting game. We can say exciting because we got this miss from both at some point. And hopefully in the last game we'll still have some exciting stuff, but not this exciting of blundering that quickly, because if Nepo would found that simple move rook to e5, then the game would be over and Hans would resign, clearly not in his favor. So we want huge battle, but not simple blunders. But as you see, clearly that we are all humans, we can all blunder, we all make mistakes. Don't be harsh on yourself when you make the same mistake, because clearly after this match you can see that chess is hard. Thanks for being here for the morning round at Belgrade in the match of Hans Niemann and Jan Nepomniachtchi. I'll be covering the stream for the next round in a few hours. Stay tuned. Nepo is leading the match 4-3 and warm up before the final game. See you soon.